Hi everybody, you're watching the Christiana321. I am the Christiana. So this is just the opening clip. This is going to be a multi-day vlog of me reading, well, you read the title, maybe? Reading some poetry. So I haven't read poetry, like more than one or two poems at a time. One of the podcasts I listen to reads poetry from time to time. And so I've heard some poetry, but I haven't sat there and read a poetry book from beginning to end. Java is sitting in my lap, so I'm sorry if I'm not being as animated with my hands, because she is demanding that I give her scritches and pets. The 5 books that I'm starting off with that I think that I'm going to plan to read for this video are What Once Burst with Brilliance by Robert Lee Kendrick. So this is an author that I actually saw in person at an open mic night. The first half of the evening was an open mic night, and then the second half was this particular author, and he read several of his poems, and there's like a Q&A section and everything, and they were really good. So I bought 2 of these and gave one to my friend, and then it just sat on my shelf as a book from a person that I met. So it's got a lot of poems in here. If I remember correctly from the open mic night, the first half are like life and were kind of like funny and everything, and then the second half were more like and the second half were nature-y. So we'll see. The Hill We Climb by Amanda Gorman. Amanda Gorman recited this poem that she wrote at the inauguration for President Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris, the youngest poet to deliver poetry reading at a presidential inauguration, which is really cool, and people talked about it for a long time. I haven't actually heard her whole, like, her reciting the whole thing. I've heard clips that were shared on Facebook because I'm, like, not good. Next is also from Target, so I'm sorry, but Light Filters in Poems by Caroline Kaufman, who I guess is an Instagram famous person. I don't know, I hadn't heard of her before, but it was over in the poetry section, and it had a pretty cover, minus the sticker. And so I figured I'd give it a try. I think I'll probably be better at reading modern or like current poets than if I tried to read, like, you might be able to see it back here. I've got a Walt Whitman book. It'd be a little bit intimidating. If you saw my video on intimidating books, Walt Whitman was not on the list of ones that I wanted to read and was intimidated by, but I'm definitely intimidated. Poetry and Lyrics by Alicia Keys. It's called Tears for Water. So I'm assuming it's some of her songs and then also just poems. She is not an artist that I have followed very specifically, like when her music's on, I think it's great, but I don't know that I've ever owned any of her albums. And then lastly, once I've gotten my feet wet in poetry and I'm getting the like reading in verse thing down, I do want to read a story that's in verse. And there are many famous classic ones, and like I said, I'm kind of intimidated by classics, but this is a book that's been sitting on my shelf for a while. I've wanted to read it because it's part of the zeitgeist. It's a classic. It's Dante's Inferno. But also, just look at this cover. It is a story told in a series of poems. One of the booktubers that I watch has been reading this recently, or at least I've been watching the vlogs where she was reading it recently, and I think I'm ready. Alright, I'll check back in once I've started reading them and let you know how I'm feeling. finished What Once Burst with Brilliance. It's okay. I think, like, it started making me remember why I struggled so much with reading poetry for school and high school and college. Basically, I always feel like I'm missing something. Some bit of context. I don't know. It's like reading a play. Like, you've got the stage directions and some descriptors, but it's not the same as seeing the play. I kind of feel that way with poetry, is like I'm missing something. Overall, like, it was fine. I liked the nature poems better than the ones that were more autobiographical. The ones that were nature and autobiographical were awesome, but it felt like a lot of the ones that were just about his life, he was going for shock factor in some of the words that he used rather than like a descriptive word. He would just use like something really blunt and kind of like gross sometimes, which like is a fine style choice. It just took me out of the poetry of it, and I was just like, oh, well, this is just some dude talking, which if that's what he's going for, cool. So I'm gonna move on to the next book, but I should probably eat lunch first. Hey, so quick costume change. I'll do a like outfit of the day, I guess. This is my yoga outfit. I've got hot yoga coming up here in a couple of hours, so if I get ready for it, get dressed and all, it's a lot more likely that I can force myself to actually go to it. Sorry if you can hear my washing machine in the background. I just finished The Hill We Climb by Amanda Gorman. I kind of thought that I was getting the collection of poems, which is actually called The Hill We Climb and Other Poems, but I'm dumb. I thought this was great. Obviously, it was beautiful. That's why it was chosen for the inauguration. And with regards to what I said about the last one, I know the context of this. I don't know a whole lot about Amanda, but I know the stuff the nation's been going through for the last 4 years, shall we say, that would inspire this kind of work. I guess I still have some time before yoga, so I think I'm gonna start the Alicia Keys one. I probably won't be able to get through it before yoga, but I'll continue reading after yoga. Okay. And also, it's 9 million degrees in my car, so I'm just already getting warmed up. So you don't get to see me in my full hot yoga sweatiness glory, because in the last like 10 minutes it just cooled down. And they added back in the essential oil cold towel, like frozen towel thing that they had to get rid of during the, you know, it was lovely. Now, I got here super early, so I ended up finishing the Alicia Keys poems book. Excellent. I did not recognize any of the lyrics as a song I've known, so I think I'm gonna listen to an Alicia Keys playlist while I'm driving back to my apartment. And then I'm going to take a shower and then I'm going to eat something and move on to the next book of poems. So I will see you when I don't look like this. So, another outfit change. You ready for this? This is my PJs. Yes, sometimes I wear matching PJs to bed because I'm either an adult or 7. They wouldn't sell matching PJ sets for adults if adults weren't supposed to wear them. So anyway, I ordered some food right before I took my shower. Yes, my hair is wet. I let it air dry. Fashion tip, or hair vlogger life. I don't know, whatever. So, Tears for Water by Alicia Keys. I started talking about it a little bit when I was leaving yoga, but oh my goodness. Okay, so where do I even begin? I'll probably do a wrap-up of all of the books at the very end, but going back to the theme of like context really helps. Her book's split up into 3 sections. The first section is poems that I guess she's never shared with anybody before, and for the ones that need context for you to understand, she puts some context afterwards and be like, hey, this is what I was talking about, in case you were curious, and I love that. So there was this one poem in the first section called Unfulfilled Keys, and in it she gets like really raw and emotional and vulnerable. I'm talking about some like kind of intimate stuff where it was like, hon, did you know that like potentially millions of people are gonna read this book, right? Like, are you sure you want to put that out there? Like that. Because, yeah, it seemed like she was talking about missing this dude and, like, everything about him. And then, in a little blurb where she explains what it's about, it's like, this isn't actually about a dude. It's about her missing the piano. So, her, like, all the stuff about her, like, touching the dude was about her touching the piano keys. I was like, oh, that makes a lot more sense. Why you would be okay with people reading those thoughts. For the rest of the time that I'm waiting on my food to get here, and then after I eat, I'll be reading Light Filters In, poems by Caroline Kaufman. It's one of the rare hardbacks that doesn't have a dust jacket. I don't know how I feel about that because I love a good dust jacket. Light Filters In, poems by Caroline Kaufman, which means I've gotten through all of the poetry books that I plan to read except for the Inferno. Caroline Kaufman, what can I say about Light Filters In? It's a very raw and emotional read. There is, in her author's note, she's got some trigger warnings. Take them seriously. All in all, it's really beautiful. A lot of these poems, maybe all of these poems, let's see. Pretty sure all of these poems she wrote as a teenager. So if your teenagerdom was anything like my teenagerdom, you'll remember it was pretty dramatic. So she's dealing with some really big issues, and so it makes sense for it to be dramatic. But also, like, it made me, oh yeah, no, I remember being a teenager. Everything was just the most. It was good. I enjoyed it. Definitely, if you are in, like, your teenage years or even your college years, I think that this would be really relevant to you and the things that you might be feeling. But yeah, as a nearly 30-year-old person, it was just kind of nostalgic to remember how I felt back then. So yeah, I will see you whenever it's time to start reading The Inferno, which might be tomorrow, might be in a couple of days. You know how I feel about classics. They're very intimidating. I don't always wear my glasses when I'm at home, even when I'm reading. I really only need them if I'm doing something where I'm changing vantage points, like looking down at my phone and then up at my TV. My TV is behind you. Or if I'm driving or at work sometimes. Not that you asked, but that's where we are. My goodness. Okay, so you know how after each of the books pretty much I've been talking about context and needing context and like how can I enjoy poems if I have no context? So I had some context for The Inferno, like I knew basically what it was about, circles of hell, whatever. But to get the full context, like, you would need a 4-year degree just in this book. The history, Christianity, mythology. There's a lot of Greek mythology in here, which luckily I just recently read Song of Achilles, which gave me, like, some idea of some of the people in here. The geography of the land. I'm going to talk more about this tomorrow because I need to wake up for work in about 5 hours, and this is a mistake. Okay, so I kind of thought that I'd show up in my work clothes and be super professional. But that's not what I'm here to talk about with you today. What we're here to talk about is the fact that I've now read 5 poetry books. Some of them may count more than others. I don't know. Depends on your opinion. And basically, what I learned from this is poetry's fine, but it's a lot more difficult to get the full story and understand the full story unless you have the context of the writer and what they're going through. Books that gave me context, or that I just knew the context because I'm so smart and I've been alive in the last several years, I enjoyed a lot more than the ones that I did not have context for. This one I kind of had context for. I didn't know what this author in particular was going through. But it was a very relatable feeling as someone who also went through some tough stuff during my high school years. And then we'll come to the Inferno. So I have a lot of thoughts on the Inferno, but I don't know if any of them are like good, I guess, or like accurate, because I don't have the context. I don't really know very much about Dante or about most of the people that he mentions, the different philosophers and politicians and just all these different people. It did give me lots of thoughts about, I grew up in the Catholic Church, and how we thought about the afterlife and everything, and a lot of people would speak about Dante's Inferno as if it was like confirmed as part of the Catholic Church. And after reading it myself, I don't know that it would be, but again, I don't even know enough about Catholicism to make that judgment. When I was reading the Inferno, after I read the first like 2 or 3 cantos or chapters or whatever, poems, I realized like I'm not getting it. Ow! I realized, you know, I'm just not getting this. And so I started Googling and just being like, am I reading the Inferno bad? How do I read the Inferno in a way that like will help me understand what's happening? So I found this YouTube video about how to read Dante's Inferno, basically. Focused mostly just on the first like handful of cantos when I was getting into specifics, but I think that it helped me get into the Inferno and get a much better idea. And basically his point was that the book is a cathedral, not the Mona Lisa. So when you first look at a painting or like a singular statue, you can like you take it all in for a second, but then you can really get into the details, into the contours, into like every little aspect. Whereas with a cathedral, you have to take it in all at once. All of the different stained glass, the paintings, the ceiling, the pews, just everything. You take it in all at once as the big picture. And then once you get a feel for everything, that's when you focus in on the little details. Because if you start focusing on the little details too soon, you're gonna miss it. Which is definitely what I was doing when I first started reading. When I first started reading the cantos, I was trying to figure out what every word meant and like how it all fit together. So I've got a lot of feelings about the Inferno, and some of it I think I just need more context for it to figure out like who Virgil was. I mean, I've heard of him, but I don't really know anything other than that he existed. Even if I don't do more research into the Inferno and the people mentioned therein, I would like to do another reading of it maybe in a year or two, just to see like if on a second viewing I get more, I can take in more of the cathedral. All in all, I would like to give more books written in verse a chance, but just books of poetry aren't really my thing. If you have a favorite book of poetry that you think is just gonna change my mind, let me know in the comments below. Like this video if you liked it, and subscribe for more content from me, your favorite YouTuber who nobody's ever heard of. Have a good night, sweet dreams, and I'll see you Monday.